You ever stop and wonder what's really going on in our brains when we learn a new language? I mean, it's so much more than just memorizing vocabulary lists, right? It's this amazing journey that starts out there, in the world around us, and ends up literally rewiring how we think. So let's dive in and really unpack the science of how we truly pick up a second language.
All right, let's kick things off with the big one. The question every single language learner has asked themselves. Is it better to just hit the books in a classroom, or should you just pack your bags, move to a new country, and jump right into the deep end? You know, it's that classic debate, and the answer? Well, it's not nearly as simple as you'd think. It actually gets to the very heart of how we learn.
And to get to that answer, we first have to wrap our heads around this idea that where we learn fundamentally changes how we learn. The environment isn't just some passive backdrop. It's an active ingredient in the whole process.
So it really boils down to two main ways we can learn a language. On one hand, you've got naturalistic learning. This is that total immersion, right? You move to a new country and you're surrounded by the language 24/7. And on the other hand, there's instructed learning, which is what we all know from school, the structured classroom setting. Now, one isn't automatically better than the other, but they totally shape your brain and even the kinds of mistakes you make in completely different ways.
You see, these different environments got researchers asking a really important question. Are there mistakes a student makes in a classroom the same as the ones they make out in the wild? And how we've answered that question over the years has completely changed our understanding of the learning process itself.
So the old way of thinking was something called contrastive analysis, and it basically blamed everything on your first language. The idea was that your native tongue was interfering with the new language, causing all your errors. But then came this revolutionary new idea, error analysis. Researchers started to actually listen to the mistakes learners were making, and they realized something incredible. The errors weren't just random slip-ups. They were systematic. They were clues, evidence that the learner was actively and creatively trying to figure out the rules of this new language all on their own.
And this brings us to this really powerful concept called interlanguage. This is the idea that what a learner is speaking isn't just a broken or bad version of the language they're trying to learn. No way. It's its own unique logical language system with its own rules and its own grammar. This was a total game changer because it stopped treating learners like they were just failing and started seeing them as what they are, active builders of a whole new way of communicating.
Okay, so if learners are busy building this system inside their own minds, what does that process actually look like? Well, for that, we have to turn to one of the most influential thinkers in this entire field, Stephen Krashen, and his totally groundbreaking model for how we acquire a second language.
Now, the absolute core of Krashen's whole model is the comprehensible input hypothesis. The easiest way to think about it is like the Goldilocks principle for language learning. We learn best when the language we're hearing isn't too easy and it's not too hard, it's just right. He gave it a name, I+1. I is your current level, and the +1 is that little bit of information that's just one step beyond what you already know. It's in that sweet spot, trying to understand those slightly more advanced messages that our brain just automatically starts absorbing new grammar and new words.
But, and this is a huge but, here's the catch. You could be getting the most perfect I+1 input in the world, and it still might not get through. Krashen said we have what he called an effective filter. Think of it like an emotional firewall. When a learner is feeling stressed out, anxious, or just isn't motivated, that filter goes up. And when it's up, it literally blocks that perfect, comprehensible input from getting in and being processed. This explains so much, right? It's why feeling relaxed and confident can make such a massive difference in how fast you learn.
Krashen's focus on input was absolutely revolutionary, but there was maybe one piece of the puzzle still missing. I mean, if learning is all about receiving input, then what's the point of actually speaking? Well, it turns out the conversation isn't just for practice. It's a core part of the learning machine itself.
And that brings us to the interaction hypothesis. This idea, from Michael Long, it builds on Krashen's work, but adds this really critical new layer, interaction. Long argued that it's the active, back and forth of talking with someone that actually makes the input understandable in the first place. So it's not enough to just sit back and listen. You've got to get in there and engage.
So what does this actually look like in a real conversation? Well, researchers call it the negotiation for meaning. It's all those little moments. It's when you have to ask, sorry, could you say that again? Or when you check to see if someone's following you, like, you know what I mean? And maybe most importantly, it's when a native speaker recasts what you just said. They sort of repeat it back to you, but in the correct way. That little moment is so powerful because it helps you finally notice the gap between how you said something and how it's supposed to be said. And that's what pushes you forward.
So when you put this all together, the big picture becomes pretty clear.
We've gone from the learning environment to how we think about mistakes and deep inside the mind of the learner. And it all leads right here. Real language learning isn't a passive thing. It's not about just absorbing information. It's an active, creative, and interactive process. It's about building your own unique language system, piece by piece, through conversation. So the real question for any learner out there isn't just, what can I listen to or what should I read? It's, what's one conversation I can start today?